Erica stood frozen in the narrow entryway of Marcus's corporate apartment, her hand tucked deep inside the pocket of her trench coat, fingers tightly gripping a glossy sonogram photo. It was supposed to be a surprise. 300 miles she had driven across state lines, fueled by terrible gas station coffee and the kind of radiant, giddy hope she hadn't felt in 3 agonizing years of fertility treatments. She had imagined a dozen ways this moment might play out. Tears of joy, a fierce embrace, maybe him spinning her around in the cramped kitchen. What she hadn't imagined was standing dead still, staring down at a pair of razor-thin, aggressively pointy stilettos kicked carelessly onto the welcome mat. They were a bright, obnoxious cherry red, and they certainly didn't belong to a 32-year-old woman who practically lived in sensible flats and tailored suits. The apartment was entirely too quiet, save for the muffled, rhythmic thumping of a bass, heavy pop song leaking from the closed bedroom door at the end of the hall. The air conditioning was cranked up high, but a cold sweat broke out across the back of Erica's neck. 10 years of loving this man, of pulling double shifts to put him through his master's degree, of meticulously balancing their joint checking account so he could take this out, of state promotion for their future. Erica didn't gasp. She didn't drop her purse. A strange, glacial calm washed over her, freezing the bubbling joy in her chest into something hard and sharp. She walked down the hallway, her footsteps completely silent on the plush carpet, and pushed the bedroom door open. It wasn't fully latched. The midday sun was streaming through the blinds, illuminating the tangled mess of the king-size bed. Marcus was sitting up against the headboard, a cigarette dangling loosely between his fingers, the ashtray resting on Erica's side of the nightstand. Tucked under his arm, wrapped tightly in the expensive linen sheets Erica had bought him for Christmas, was a girl. She couldn't have been older than 22. She had long, perfectly messy blonde hair and the kind of doe-eyed, panic-stricken expression of someone who had just been caught shoplifting. "What are you doing here?" Marcus asked, his voice thick with sleep and annoyance. He didn't scramble to cover himself. He didn't shove the girl under the bed. He just casually crushed the cigarette out, his gaze meeting Erica's with a terrifyingly flat exhaustion. "You didn't even say you were coming up." The sheer, monumental audacity of his tone hit Erica like a physical blow. Her heart was hammering violently against her ribs, but her face remained an unreadable mask. Obviously, a heads-up would have ruined the aesthetic, she said, her voice eerily steady. Her eyes flicked to the girl, who was now clutching the sheets to her chin, visibly trembling, sensing the shift. Marcus threw a protective arm across the girl's shoulders. He actually shifted his weight, putting himself between his wife and his mistress, a knight in shining armor defending his damsel from the evil dragon of holy matrimony. "Don't do that. Don't look at her like that, Erica." Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. He looked deeply inconvenienced. "This isn't about Summer. She has nothing to do with it. Honestly, maybe it is good you are here. We needed to have this conversation anyway." "Conversation," Erica echoed, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. "I am suffocating, Em," he said, leaning forward, fully leaning into his midlife crisis monologue. "Look at you. You walk in here, and you are already calculating the damage. You are always optimizing, always stressing about the mortgage, the Roth IRAs, the next 5-year plan. I can't breathe in this marriage anymore. I am exhausted," he gestured vaguely to the girl wide-eyed beside him. "Summer, she reminds me of what it's like to just live, to eat a cheap slice of pizza and laugh without worrying about the credit card bill. She makes me feel alive. You and I, we're just business partners at this point." Let's unpack this tragic midlife monologue. Marcus claims his 22-year-old mistress makes him feel alive because they can eat cheap pizza without worrying about credit card bills. Well, of course he isn't worrying about the bills. Erica is paying them. Men like Marcus love to paint their responsible wives as suffocating control freaks, conveniently ignoring that her financial scaffolding is exactly what funds his illusion of eternal youth. He doesn't want a romantic partner. He wants a corporate sponsor. Erica's reaction here is flawless. She doesn't scream or beg. She looks at this overgrown frat boy and realizes her investment has severely depreciated. When a man tells you that your competence is ruining his vibe, believe him. Then immediately cut off his funding. Erica felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in the back of her throat, but she swallowed it down with the bitter bile of betrayal. The absolute nerve of this man. Of course she worried about the credit card bills. Someone had to pay for the luxury apartment he was currently defiling, and the tailored suits he wore to his fancy executive lunches. She had been the designated adult for a decade, absorbing every ounce of financial stress so he could chase his dreams, only for him to resent her for keeping the lights on. She looked at him, really looked at him. The man she had shared a twin bed with in college, the man who had cried at the altar. He was gone. In his place sat a colossal, narcissistic clique. "I'll leave," Erica repeated softly. She slowly pulled her hand out of her coat pocket. The sonogram photo remained hidden inside, a heavy, secret weight against her hip. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of breaking her in front of a college kid. She wasn't going to weaponize her unborn child to make him stay if he wanted out. She was going to hold the door wide open. "Okay, Marcus," Erica said, turning on her heel. "Wait, that is it. You are just walking away." He called out after her, sounding almost offended that she wasn't putting up a fight. "Erica, we need to talk about the house. I suggest you don't speak to me without a lawyer present." She threw over her shoulder, not breaking her stride. She walked out the front door, leaving the obnoxious red stilettos right where they were. She marched down the sterile, carpeted corridor of the high-rise, rode the elevator down in absolute silence, and pushed through the heavy glass doors into the biting chill of the afternoon air. She made it all the way to her car in the parking garage. She unlocked the door, her hands finally beginning to shake as the adrenaline began to recede. She reached for the door handle, but before her fingers could grasp the metal, a sudden, blinding cramp ripped through her lower abdomen. It was a sharp, tearing agony that stole the breath straight from her lungs. Erica gasped, her knees buckling instantly. She gripped the side mirror to keep from collapsing onto the concrete, her knuckles turning white. A warm, terrifying dampness began to spread terribly fast. She squeezed her eyes shut, a single solitary tear finally escaping as the physical pain mirrored the absolute destruction of her entire world. The glaring, sterile fluorescent lights of the emergency room hummed a cruel lullaby to the child Erica would now never meet. They buzzed like angry hornets in the quiet of the small examination cubicle, a sound she tried desperately to tune out. She lay on her back, staring blindly at the white ceiling tiles, her hands resting limply over a flat, empty stomach. A thin paper gown covered the physical wreckage of the night, but absolutely nothing could cover the gaping crater left in the center of her chest. She had managed to flag down a security guard in the parking garage who promptly called an ambulance. The 300-mile drive fueled by nervous excitement, the absolute devastation of seeing her husband wrapped around an oversized child, the fight or flight adrenaline, rush to the elevator. It had all exacted a devastating toll on her small frame. Erica, usually so fiercely capable, had been reduced to a fragile, shivering mess in the back of an ambulance, clutching a damp hospital sheet. By the time a kind-eyed, exhausted nurse had confirmed what Erica already knew, it was past 3 in the morning. For the first time in 10 years, she was completely, terrifyingly alone. The husband she should be leaning on was hours away, probably fast asleep, holding Summer in sheets Erica paid for. A sharp ping broke the deafening silence. It echoed violently off the linoleum floor. Erica slowly turned her head. Her phone sat innocently on a metal side table beside a stack of release forms, detailing her devastating loss. She didn't want to look. She wanted to lie there and let the harsh lights bleach her into nothingness. But the practical, responsible part of her brain, the part Marcus despised because it wouldn't let him be a careless 22-year-old forever, prompted her to reach for the device. The screen illuminated the dark corner. It wasn't a frantic call from Marcus realizing his catastrophic mistake. It wasn't him begging for forgiveness. It was a text message sent 20 minutes ago. "Look, Em, your dramatic exit today was childish. The silent treatment isn't going to fix anything. We need to be adults about this and figure out an amicable split of our assets before things get messy. Let's not let the lawyers drain our bank accounts. I want my half of the house and the savings so I can start fresh. We just grew apart. Don't punish me for wanting to be happy." Another ping quickly followed, a promotional email from a luxury jewelry brand confirming a recent order shipped to Marcus's out-of-state address. An order for a dainty rose gold necklace, not an apology. A necklace for a girl 10 years her junior. Erica stared at the glaring pixels of her phone screen. At that exact moment, the profound, agonizing grief inside her calcified. The tears she had been silently weeping onto the awful, crinkly pillowcase suddenly stopped. Any shreds of lingering affection, the ghost of the boy who had once eaten half a burger and saved the rest for her in college, vanished into a cold, impenetrable armor. He wanted an amicable split. He wanted his half of the checking account she had built from scratch. He wanted to start fresh while she was lying in a hospital bed, bleeding out the future they had planned. Number, absolutely not. "I won't let you," she whispered to the empty room, her voice hoarse but completely steady. She didn't text him back. Instead, she swung her legs over the edge of the cot, wincing as a dull ache shot through her core. She ignored it. Erica pulled on her clothes with robotic efficiency, signed her discharge papers with shaking but intentional strokes of a cheap blue pen, and ordered an expensive car service back to the city. She had a 300-mile drive back to her own life, and she wasn't going to waste a single second of it crying over a dead marriage. By sunrise, Erica was back in their sprawling suburban home. The house she had meticulously decorated, paid the mortgage on, and kept immaculate. The silence of the house no longer felt lonely. It felt like a battlefield waiting to be prepped. She skipped changing into pajamas and went straight to the hall closet for garbage bags. For the next 12 hours, fueled by black coffee and cold fury, Erica moved like a machine. She didn't care about the neatness. She dumped his expensive tailored suits, the ones she ironed every Sunday, into heavy-duty trash bags. She threw his golf clubs in the hallway. She tossed his personalized whiskey decanter and his ridiculous collection of vintage watches into a cardboard box. She was a hurricane of efficiency. Every single item that belonged to Marcus, down to his expensive aftershave, was boxed up, taped shut, and hauled out the front door. By late afternoon, she hired a two-man crew with a flatbed truck to deliver the massive heap of masculine clutter exactly 300 miles away to the front door of his fancy corporate high-rise. Let Summer deal with his messes. The truck rolled away. Erica pulled her phone out again. She dialed the number for a local, highly rated locksmith. Within the hour, a technician was installing a sleek, heavy-duty smart lock on her front door, syncing a brand new, complex passcode directly to her phone. She stood back, admiring the blinking green light on the heavy metal handle. She finally allowed herself a sip of lukewarm coffee, the corners of her mouth twitching upward in a dark, humorless smile. It was satisfying, a physical barrier between her safe haven and the parasite who had nearly destroyed it. A few days later, Erica was sitting cross-legged on the plush white sofa, casually scrolling through an iPad, when a notification popped up on screen. It was an alert from her porch security camera. She tapped the icon. The live feed buffered for a second before revealing the front stoop. Marcus was pounding furiously on the heavy oak door. His usually perfectly styled hair was a mess, his face flushed red with exertion. Behind him, trying to make herself as small as possible, stood Summer, clutching a designer handbag that looked suspiciously new. Erica turned the volume up on her iPad. "Erica, open the door!" Marcus bellowed, rattling the doorknob until his knuckles turned white. He hit the heavy wood with a loud smack. "I know you are in there. You can't just box up all my stuff and dump it in my hallway like a lunatic. We haven't even filed any paperwork yet. This is my house too." Erica leaned closer to the screen, her finger hovering over the microphone button. She pressed it, her voice projecting clearly through the small speaker mounted above the doorbell. "Your house?" she asked, her tone dripping with polite incredulity. "Marcus, honey, you might want to look at the paperwork again before you bruise your hand like that. Now, back away from my property before I call the cops and have you both arrested for trespassing. If you want a toothbrush, go buy one with Summer's cheap pizza money. Oh, and keep your eye on the mail. I believe my lawyer has something very dense for you to read." She released the button and watched with immense satisfaction as the color drained entirely from Marcus's face right before the screen cut to black. The bitter taste of black coffee rested uneasily on Erica's tongue, doing nothing to counteract the pathetic sight across the street from the cafe. Sitting in the driver's seat of a ridiculous, oversized, leased sports car was Marcus, desperately trying to look nonchalant. He had the window rolled down, resting one arm casually on the doorframe, a pair of aviators hiding his eyes. He looked exactly like a 30-something man who had suddenly realized he had to act like a college frat boy to impress his new, significantly younger girlfriend. Summer was in the passenger seat, visibly pouting, scrolling on her phone with manicured thumbs. Erica sat inside the cafe, tucked into a corner booth, a steaming mug of dark roast resting beside a thick manila envelope. She watched his pathetic display for a moment before turning her attention to the window reflecting her own image. She was dressed impeccably, a sharp charcoal blazer over a silk blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a neat professional bun. She looked like a woman who managed hedge funds, not a woman who had spent 5 hours in a sterile hospital room alone just weeks ago. The physical pain had subsided to a dull ache, but the cold fire in her eyes burned brighter than ever. Marcus finally pushed open the cafe door, a bell jingling cheerfully to announce his arrival. He scanned the room, his eyes quickly finding Erica. He puffed out his chest and swaggered over, sliding into the booth opposite her with a heavy sigh that bordered on theatrical. "This place is depressing as hell, he started, immediately trying to set the tone, asserting his dominance over the environment. "We couldn't have met somewhere with decent lighting. I mean, really, look at this table." Erica didn't blink. She took a slow sip of her coffee. "I picked it because it's neutral ground, Marcus, and because I didn't want you leaving a trail of your midlife crisis slime in my regular spots." Marcus bristled, his false confidence instantly cracking. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, patronizing whisper. Look, Erica, the anger is understandable. I get it. You are hurt. But packing my stuff up and changing the locks, that's petty. And now your lawyer sends a letter demanding a meeting. Come on, we don't need to make this a circus. We can just split everything down the middle like adults. We sell the house, divide the savings, and we both walk away clean. We just grew apart. You know, we did. Don't make this messy just because your feelings are bruised. He tried to look sympathetic, his brown eyes practically begging her to be the sensible, accommodating woman she had always been. The woman who reorganized her entire life to fit his narrative. It was almost comical how thoroughly he underestimated her. He was waiting for her to break, to cry, to bargain for him to come back. Erica placed her coffee mug down with a soft, deliberate clink. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't clench her fists. She simply tapped her manicured index finger against the top of the manila envelope, resting between them. I have absolutely no intention of making things messy, Marcus, Erica said, her voice smooth as silk over glass. In fact, I plan on keeping things exceedingly clean as a whistle. She slid the folder across the sticky laminate table. Marcus picked it up with a hesitant frown. He expected divorce papers, maybe a list of demands for alimony. He tugged at the string closure and pulled out a stack of neatly stapled pages. His eyes quickly scanned the top sheet. "What is this?" he muttered, squinting at the dense legal jargon. "Is this a settlement offer? Because I already told you, 50-50, keep reading," Erica interrupted softly. Marcus turned the page. His eyes snagged on a specific heading in bold print. He paused, his breath hitching slightly. He read the paragraph again, then a third time. Erica watched him with clinical detachment. The document wasn't a standard divorce settlement. It was a copy of a notarized postnuptial agreement. They had signed exactly 5 years ago. It had happened on their anniversary, after a particularly rough patch where Marcus had briefly entertained the idea of accepting a consulting gig that essentially involved partying with a questionable group of frat house alumni in Vegas. He had been so desperate to prove his loyalty back then, so eager to show Erica he was committed to their future, that he had grandstanded. He dragged her to a notary public, a bottle of cheap champagne in hand, and signed a document he had drafted himself as a grand romantic gesture. Teat was a strict infidelity clause. According to the document, in the event that Marcus engaged in a physical or emotional affair outside the marriage, he willingly forfeited all claims to their shared marital assets. The house, the cars, the joint savings account, they had steadily built off Erica's meticulous budgeting. It all defaulted to her entirely. Marcus had proudly signed it right in front of the notary, grinning like an idiot, proclaiming that he would sooner cut off his own arm than cheat on the love of his life. Now, sitting in the depressing cafe, the memory clearly slammed into Marcus like a freight train. The smugness drained completely from his face, replaced by a pasty, sickly white. His jaw dropped slightly. His eyes darted from his own bold signature at the bottom of the page to Erica's perfectly relaxed face. You kept this," he squeaked, his voice cracking like a teenager's. This was a joke, a romantic gesture. It's not legally binding. We didn't even use a real lawyer." The sheer arrogance of the grand romantic gesture. 5 years ago, Marcus signed a postnuptial infidelity clause to stroke his own ego, assuming his wife would never actually hold him accountable. He viewed it as theater. Erica viewed it as a contingency plan. There is a specific kind of poetic justice in watching a man be legally destroyed by a contract he drafted himself to prove how loyal he was. Women are routinely called calculating for protecting their assets, but Erica simply let his past arrogance bankrupt his present audacity. She didn't have to fight him for the house. She just let the ink dry. A man's ego is often his own favorite murder weapon. You just have to let him wield it. It was notarized, Marcus, Erica replied calmly, a dangerous smile finally touching the corners of her lips. And my very real bulldog of a lawyer checked it over yesterday. It is ironclad in this state. You signed away your rights to my house, my savings, and my car. The second you decided Summer's doe eyes were worth more than 10 years of marriage. Marcus dropped the papers back onto the table like they were radioactive. He ran both hands through his carefully styled hair, completely unraveling. You can't do this, Erica. You can't leave me with nothing. The apartment is a corporate lease. If I lose my job, I am out on the street. I need half that money. Then you shouldn't have been suffocating, Marcus, Erica said, standing up gracefully. She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her blazer and picked up her empty mug. You wanted freedom to eat cheap pizza and not worry about bills. Consider this my gift to you. You are now completely unburdened by my financial planning. She turned and began to walk away, enjoying the stunned silence of the cafe patrons who had shamelessly eavesdropped. Erica, wait. Marcus scrambled out of the booth, knocking his own lukewarm coffee onto the floor with a clatter. This isn't fair. You planned this. You are a money-hungry monster. Erica paused at the door, her hand resting lightly on the brass handle. She didn't look back at him. She looked straight out the window at Summer, who was still pouting in the absurd sports car. I didn't plan for you to be a cliché, Marcus, Erica said, loud enough for half the cafe to hear. I just planned for the worst-case scenario. Happy freedom. She pushed the door open, the bell jingling a cheerful tune as she stepped out into the crisp air, leaving Marcus staring helplessly down at his own signature. The terrifying realization settling deep in his bones that his desire to just live had suddenly made him absolutely, utterly broke. The first genuine rain of the season began to fall, the morning Erica finally said goodbye to the ghost she had been carrying. The earth in the corner of her pristine backyard was damp and yielding as she pressed a small, ornate wooden box into the shallow hole she had dug. Inside lay the glossy sonogram photo, a tiny cashmere booty she had bought in secret months ago, and the hospital discharge papers, the only tangible proof that her baby had ever existed. Erica didn't cry. The tears had burned out, leaving behind a fierce, protective clarity. She patted the soil down, her bare hands dark with dirt, and carefully planted a white iceberg rosebush over the spot. It was elegant, hardy, and bloomed even in harsh conditions. Much like the woman she was forcing herself to become. She stood up, wiping her hands on her faded denim jeans, and looked back over her house. Her house. The mortgage was fully in her name now, the transfer expedited by a fiercely competent, terrifyingly sharp divorce attorney named Sarah, who had taken one look at the notarized postnuptial agreement and grinned like a shark smelling blood in the water. Inside, her phone buzzed on the kitchen island. Erica walked in, washed her hands methodically at the sink, and picked up the device. It was Sarah. Morning, Erica. Sarah's crisp voice crackled through the speaker. I have a lovely Friday update for you. Opposing counsel, if you can even call that strip. Mall attorney Marcus hired counsel just called. They're trying to file an emergency motion to unfreeze the joint accounts. Erica took a measured sip of her lemon water. On what grounds? Play money, mostly, Sarah chuckled. According to the financial disclosures we forced out of him yesterday, your soon-to-be ex-husband is currently drowning in a sea of his own making. The leased sports car, delinquent, the luxury high-rise. It is a corporate stipend, sure, but he's been subsidizing the lifestyle upgrades, expensive dinners, designer bags for the 22-year-old on his personal credit. Credit that until 2 weeks ago was backed by your pristine credit score and the joint savings you locked down. Erica leaned against the marble counter, a slow, dark satisfaction uncoiling in her stomach. Marcus had always been terrible with money. He bought the illusion of wealth on installment plans. Erica had been the invisible scaffolding, holding his entire VIP persona together. Deny the motion, Erica said smoothly. The postnup clearly states the joint savings revert to me in the event of an affair. He has his salary. He can live on that. Oh, we already denied it. I just wanted to hear you gloat, Sarah said breezily. But Erica, there is something else. When we audited his recent expenses to establish the timeline of the infidelity, we found a discrepancy, a big one. It involves his company. Erica froze, the glass of water pausing halfway to her lips. Define discrepancy. He hasn't just been spending his own money on Summer. Sarah lowered her voice, the professional banter dropping away. He's been expensing her. Flights to resorts disguised as conferences. Thousands of dollars in luxury dinners billed as client entertainment. He's been using his corporate card as his personal sugar daddy fund. A heavy, stunned silence filled the kitchen. Erica closed her eyes, pressing 2 fingers to her temples. The sheer, unadulterated stupidity of the man was staggering. He wasn't just a narcissist, he was reckless. Does his company know? Erica asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. Not yet, Sarah replied. But during discovery, these records become part of the case file. If this goes before a judge, it becomes public record. His corporate HR department will eventually find out. Let it, Erica said coldly. Don't hide a single receipt, Sarah. Lay it all bare. 300 miles away, the illusion was already shattering. Marcus sat in a booth at an upscale sushi restaurant, sweat prickling his hairline despite the powerful air conditioning. Across from him, Summer was pouting. The designer handbag she had flaunted on Erica's porch was resting on the empty chair beside her. I don't understand why we have to cancel the Cabo trip, Summer whined, swirling a lychee martini with a manicured finger. You promised, you said we were going to celebrate your new freedom. I told you, babe, the lawyers are just tying things up. It's a temporary cash flow issue, Marcus lied, his voice tight. He picked up his phone under the table, frantically checking his banking app for the 5th time that hour. Available balance, $412.18 credit card balance, $24,500. Over limit, his stomach churned violently. He had spent his entire morning getting yelled at by a panicked attorney who told him the postnup was bulletproof. Erica wasn't budging. She had legally severed his access to the safety net he hadn't even realized he relied on. The waiter arrived, discreetly placing a sleek black leather checkbook on the table. Whenever you are ready, sir. Marcus swallowed hard, sliding his only remaining active credit card into the sleeve. He handed it back with a strained smile. No rush. Summer watched him narrowly, the doe-eyed innocence replaced by a sudden, sharp calculation. Marcus, she said slowly, your car got towed this morning from the visitor's spot. The concierge said the tow truck was from the dealership. It is a clerical error with the lease. I am sorting it out, Marcus snapped, a little too quickly. Before Summer could push further, the waiter returned. He wasn't holding the leather checkbook politely anymore. He leaned down, his voice hushed but strictly professional. Sir, I am afraid this card has been declined. Do you have another form of payment? Summer's jaw dropped. She looked from the waiter to Marcus, the silence stretching taut and humiliating across the table. 2 tables over, A well-dressed couple glanced in their direction. Marcus's face flushed a deep, violent crimson. He fumbled in his wallet, producing a debit card he knew didn't have enough to cover the $300 bill. "Try this one, it is just fraud protection, acting up, happens all the time." The waiter nodded sympathetically and walked away. 2 minutes later, he was back, shaking his head. "Marcus," Summer whispered, her voice laced with sudden, chilling disgust. "Are you broke?" He looked at her, truly looked at the girl he had blown his entire life up for. She wasn't looking at him with the adoration he craved. She was looking at him the way one looks at spoiled milk. And in that horrifying, humiliating moment, surrounded by half-eaten sushi he couldn't afford, Marcus realized the devastating truth. Erica hadn't just changed the locks on the house. She had locked him in a prison he built himself. The silence at the sushi restaurant was so absolute that Marcus could hear the soft jazz playing through the overhead speakers. Summer didn't yell. She didn't cause a scene. For a girl who had spent the last 6 months demanding the spotlight, her exit was brutally, transactionally quiet. She reached into the pockets of the designer jacket Marcus had bought her 2 weeks ago, pulled out a crisp $50 bill, and dropped it onto the black leather checkbook. "That covers my martini and the spicy tuna," she said, her voice completely devoid of the breathy adoration he was so used to. She stood up, slinging her purse over her shoulder. "Don't call me Marcus. I don't do charity." "Summer, babe, wait," Marcus hissed, reaching for her wrist. She yanked her arm back as if he had burned her. She looked down at him, her lip curling in genuine pity. "You told me your wife was a frigid, boring control freak who held you back. Turns out she was just your wallet. Good luck paying for the Wagyu." She turned on her heel and walked out the glass doors, the valet greeting her outside as she hailed a cab. Marcus was left sitting alone, the heat of 100 sets of eyes burning into his neck. He ended up having to call a junior associate from his office, a 24-year old kid who looked up to him, to Venmo him the remaining $200, just so he could leave the restaurant without the police being involved. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Erica sat in her corner office, overlooking the city skyline. As a senior financial director for a major logistics firm, she spent her days hunting out inefficiencies, balancing budgets, and predicting market pitfalls. Marcus had always called her job soul-sucking. Looking back, she realized he hated her job because it gave her the exact skills needed to completely mathematically unspool his life. She was reviewing a Q3 forecast when a sharp ping from her private email broke her focus. It was a message from Sarah, her attorney, subject, checkmate. Body, the financial discovery files were officially processed and uploaded to the court docket this morning. As per standard procedure, they are now public record. I took the liberty of having a courier deliver a hard copy of the filing to Marcus's corporate legal department an hour ago. "Have a beautiful week, Erica." Slow, genuine smile spread across Erica's face. She closed her laptop, walked over to her floor-to-ceiling window, and looked out over the city. She imagined the dominoes falling, one by one, exactly according to gravity. 3 miles away, in the glass-walled lobby of a prestigious tech consulting firm, Marcus swiped his keycard at the security turnstiles. The light flashed red. He frowned, swiping it again. Red. "Excuse me, Mr. Davis." Marcus turned. Standing behind him were 2 towering security guards. Behind them, looking intensely uncomfortable, was the Director of Human Resources, a stern woman named Helen, who had never liked Marcus's frat boy energy. "Helen, hey, my badge is acting up," Marcus said, forcing a charismatic grin that didn't quite reach his panicked eyes. "Your badge has been deactivated, Marcus. We need you to come with us to conference room B right now. Helen's voice left no room for negotiation. 10 minutes later, Marcus was sweating through his suit. Sitting across from him were Helen and the company's head of legal. Spread out on the mahogany table between them were printed spreadsheets. Erica's spreadsheets. Marcus, the legal head, began, adjusting his glasses. We received a certified copy of a financial disclosure from your ongoing divorce proceedings this morning. Ordinarily, we do not monitor our employees' personal civil matters. However, this filing explicitly lists several cross-referenced corporate expenses. He slid a highlighted page across the table. Can you explain why a 4-day stay at an ultra-luxury resort in Cabo San Lucas, billed to your corporate card under the code Acquisition Client Entertainment, aligns perfectly with a flight manifest for yourself and a Miss Summer Summers? Marcus felt the blood drain from his head. He opened his mouth, but only a dry croak came out. Or, Helen interjected, dropping a stack of receipts onto the table with a loud smack, why a $2,000 purchase at a designer boutique was expensed as executive client gifting. We called the boutique Marcus. You bought a handbag. Our clients are enterprise software developers. I can pay it back, Marcus stammered, his bravado entirely stripped away. It was just a cash flow issue. I was going to reimburse the company account, I swear. Here lies the fatal flaw of the modern narcissist: extreme financial stupidity. Marcus thought Erica's career as a financial director was soul-sucking. How deliciously ironic that her professional superpower was exactly what mathematically unspooled his entire existence. Erica didn't call his boss crying. She didn't enact a messy, emotional revenge plot. She simply allowed his own illicit receipts to become public record during routine legal discovery. She stepped out of his way and let gravity and corporate compliance do the rest. When you spend years subsidizing a man's VIP lifestyle, he starts to believe he actually belongs in the VIP room. Erica didn't break Marcus. She simply stopped paying his admission fee, and the bouncers threw him out. That is called embezzlement, Marcus, the legal head said flatly. You have charged over $35,000 of personal, illicit expenses to this firm over the last 6 months. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated for cause. No, wait! You can't, Marcus pleaded, standing up so fast his chair tipped over. I have the apartment lease through the company. I don't have anywhere else to go. You have 48 hours to vacate the corporate housing, Helen said, her face expressionless. Your final paycheck will be withheld to partially satisfy the debt you owe us. The rest will be sent to collections. If you try to contact any clients or enter the premises again, we will press criminal charges for the fraud. Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal effects. An hour later, Marcus was standing on the sidewalk in the drizzling rain. He was clutching a small cardboard box containing a stapler, a framed photo of himself playing golf, and a dead desktop plant. His phone vibrated in his pocket. It was an automated text message. Your account ending in 4,492 is overdrawn by $34.12. Please make a deposit immediately to avoid overdraft fees. He had nothing. No wife, no girlfriend, no car, no house, no job. With trembling, wet fingers, he pulled up Erica's contact. He pressed the call button, bringing the phone to his ear, a desperate, pathetic apology forming on his lips. He would beg. He would get on his knees. He would do whatever it took to get back into that warm, perfectly decorated suburban house. The line didn't even ring. The number you have dialed has been disconnected or is no longer in service. Erica had changed her number. Back in the suburbs, the rain washed gently over the pristine backyard. The white iceberg rosebush drank in the water, its roots settling deep into the soil, anchoring it firmly into the earth. Inside, the house was warm, quiet, and completely, perfectly hers. The 48-hour eviction notice taped to the door of Marcus's luxury, high-rise apartment felt like a physical weight pressing against his chest. He stood in the center of the minimalist living room, surrounded by empty cardboard boxes he had begged off a grocery store clerk. The sweeping panoramic view of the city, which he used to boast about to anyone who would listen, now felt like a giant window showcasing the world he had just been exiled from. Panic, cold and sharp, dictated his every movement. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts, landing on Brad. Brad was the orchestrator of the Vegas consulting trips, the guy who always slapped Marcus on the back and told him a man was only as old as his latest girlfriend. Marcus hit call. It rang 4 times before picking up. "Yellow, the Brad man speaking." The voice boomed over the line, accompanied by the background noise of a revving engine. "Brad, hey man, it's Marcus." Marcus cleared his throat, trying to inject some of his old, easygoing swagger into his voice. "Listen, bro, I hit a bit of a rough patch." Erica went nuclear. "The company, well, some bureaucratic BS happened, and I'm between places. Any chance I could crash on your couch for a couple of weeks, just until I get my feet under me?" The line went quiet for a moment. The revving engine noise stopped. "Oh man, Marcus, that's rough, buddy," Brad said, his tone instantly shifting from jovial to distant. "Listen, normally I'd say mi casa es su casa, but, Madison is basically living here now. She's super weird about having guys crash, disrupts her aura or something." "Brad, come on, I am literally going to be sleeping on the street. I have zero access to my accounts." "Damn, she cleaned you out. That is wives for you, man. Told you not to sign a prenup," Brad said, ignoring the reality of the situation entirely. "Look, I actually got a run. We're heading out to Tahoe for the weekend. Let's grab a beer when you are settled." "Yeah, first round's on me." Marcus stared at the phone. He called Steve, sent to voicemail. He called Marcus, picked up, made an excuse about a sick dog, hung up. By the time the sun set, realizing the bros he had torched his marriage to impress only wanted him around when he was buying the rounds, Marcus finally cracked. He slid down the wall in his empty, sterile kitchen, buried his face in his hands, and wept. It wasn't the romantic, tragic weeping of a misunderstood hero. It was the ugly, hyperventilating sobbing of a boy who had finally touched the stove he had been warned 1,000 times was hot. 30 days later, the air inside the county courthouse was stale, smelling faintly of floor wax and old paper. Erica sat on a wooden bench outside courtroom 4B, dressed in a tailored navy sheath dress, a trench coat elegantly draped over her arm. Beside her sat Sarah, casually scrolling through emails on her tablet. His attorney officially withdrew as counsel of record yesterday, Sarah noted without looking up. "Unpaid retainers. It means he's appearing pro se, representing himself." Sarah finally looked up, a smirk playing on her lips. "This is going to be incredibly fast. The judge has no patience for pro se litigants who try to argue airtight contracts." Down the hall, the heavy oak doors swung open, and Marcus walked through the metal detectors. Erica tracked him with a cool, detached gaze. The transformation was startling. The expensive haircut had grown out shaggy and unkempt. The suit he wore was one she had bought him 3 years ago. But without the benefit of dry cleaning, it hung limply on his frame, creased and tired. He looked exhausted. He spotted Erica and stopped, his shoulders physically slumping. He trudged over, stopping 6 feet away. He didn't look at Sarah. He only looked at Erica. "M," he breathed. Marcus, she replied, her voice perfectly even. He swallowed hard, rubbing the back of his neck. Can we talk? Just you and me, not the lawyers, please. Sarah raised an eyebrow, about to interject. But Erica held up a subtle hand. She stood up, smoothing her dress, and took 2 steps forward. You have 5 minutes before the bailiff calls us, Erica said. Marcus looked at the marble floor, his jaw working as he tried to find the words. I'm staying at a Motel 6 by the interstate. I got a job, managing a cell phone kiosk at the mall. It barely covers the weekly rate. Erica didn't say anything. She waited. You broke me, Erica, he whispered, his eyes finally meeting hers, swimming with a mixture of resentment and desperate sorrow. You took everything. I know I messed up. I know I was stupid. But Summer, she is gone. My job is gone. You won. I don't understand how someone who claimed to love me for 10 years could be so cold. Can't you just release 10,000 from the savings? Just so I can put a deposit on a real apartment. Erica looked at the man she had once planned to grow old with. She searched her heart for any lingering spark of pity, any instinct to reach out and pull him back from the ledge. She found absolutely nothing. The space where Marcus used to reside was fundamentally, permanently healed over. I am not cold, Marcus. I am consequence, Erica said softly, so only he could hear. You spent our marriage acting like life was a game where your actions had no weight. You thought you could have the safety of my love and the thrill of someone else's, all subsidized by my savings and your company's credit. He flinched as if struck. I didn't break you, she continued. Her eyes locked onto his, unyielding. I just stopped fixing you. I stepped out of the way, and you collapsed under your own weight. As for the money, it is gone, Marcus. It paid off the remaining balance of the mortgage. The house is entirely unencumbered. Erica Marcus's voice broke. A tear leaked out of the corner of his eye. Davis versus Davis, the bailiff bellowed from the courtroom door, holding a clipboard. Erica didn't break eye contact for another long second. Good luck with the cell phones, Marcus. She turned and walked into the courtroom, Sarah trailing right behind her. Marcus stood frozen in the hallway, watching the heavy oak door swing shut, sealing him out of her life forever. The judge was efficient. He looked over the postnuptial agreement, noted Marcus's lack of legal representation, and asked Marcus if he understood the terms he had signed. Marcus, staring hollowly at the defense table, just mumbled, "Yes, Your Honor." Bang, the gavel fell. Erica walked out of the courthouse 15 minutes later. The rain clouds from the past few weeks had finally broken, leaving behind a brilliant, blindingly clear blue sky. She took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. She felt lighter than she had in years. She got into her car, connected her phone to the Bluetooth, and pulled out of the parking lot. She didn't drive back to her office. Instead, she drove toward the small garden center on the edge of town. She wanted to buy some fertilizer for her white iceberg rosebush. It was time to make things bloom. 3 years later, the white iceberg rosebush was no longer a fragile sapling. It had exploded into a magnificent, sprawling cascade of brilliant white blooms, its thick green vines climbing a custom iron trellis Erica had installed against the back patio. It was the first thing she looked at every morning from her kitchen window. It was a Tuesday in early June, and the morning air was warm and heavy with the scent of jasmine and wet earth. Erica stood at the kitchen island, which she had replaced with a gorgeous slab of dark soapstone, tearing out the white marble Marcus had chosen because it reminded him of a hotel lobby. In fact, everything about the house had been transformed. The walls were painted in warm, rich tones. The sterile modern furniture was gone, replaced by plush, comfortable pieces that invited you to actually sit and live. It wasn't a showpiece anymore, it was a sanctuary. Erica took a sip of her black coffee, opening her laptop. Her inbox was already flooding, but she didn't mind. 3 months ago, she had been named Chief Financial Officer of her firm, making her the youngest woman to hold the title in the company's history. She scanned a congratulatory email from a vendor before her phone buzzed softly. It was Sarah. Over the past 3 years, the terrifyingly sharp divorce attorney had transitioned into one of Erica's closest friends. Sarah, don't forget, drinks at 6. We are celebrating the quarterly earnings report, and I'm making you pay. Erica smiled, typing back a quick, "See you there." She closed her laptop, walked out the glass patio doors, and stepped barefoot onto the sun-warmed concrete. She walked over to the rosebush, gently cupping one of the heavy velvet, soft white blossoms. She thought of the tiny wooden box buried deep among the roots. The jagged, suffocating grief that had once defined her days had softened. It hadn't vanished. She knew it never truly would, but it had transformed from a sharp blade into a smooth stone she carried in her pocket. A quiet part of her story. She had survived the storm, and in the aftermath, she had built a life so beautiful and fiercely her own that the memory of Marcus felt almost like a movie she had watched a long time ago. Across town, in a cramped, second-floor apartment of a stucco complex that smelled perpetually of boiled cabbage and stale smoke, an alarm clock blared. Marcus groaned, blindly swatting at his phone on the nightstand until the screeching stopped. It was 6 a.m. He sat up, his back aching from the cheap mattress. He rubbed his face, looking around the dim room. A pile of unfolded laundry sat on a folding chair in the corner. His suit, one of only 2 he owned now, hung from the closet door, waiting for him. He was no longer selling cell phones, having managed to claw his way into a mid-level regional sales role for a plumbing supply distributor. It paid the bills, barely, provided he didn't eat out more than once a week. He didn't golf anymore. He didn't go to Vegas. The bros hadn't answered a text in 2.5 years. Marcus shuffled into the tiny galley kitchen, pulling a bruised apple from the fridge. As he took a bite, he unlocked his phone and opened LinkedIn out of habit. Right at the top of his feed was a post liked by a mutual connection. It was a link to a digital feature in City Business Weekly. The headline read, "Redefining the C-Suite. How CFO Erica Davis is steering logistics into a new era." Below the headline was a high-resolution photo of Erica. She looked breathtaking. Her posture was flawless, her eyes sharp and completely commanding. She wasn't wearing the muted blending in colors she used to wear when she accompanied him to corporate dinners. She was wearing a striking emerald green blazer, looking like a woman who owned the world she stood in. Marcus stopped chewing. He stared at the screen, a heavy, sinking feeling pulling at his chest. There she was. The woman he had called boring. The woman he thought was holding him back from his full potential. In the crushing silence of his dingy apartment, the illusion completely, totally dissolved. He hadn't outgrown her. He had been a parasite, siphoning her strength to prop himself up. And the moment she cut him off, she soared while he sank like a stone to his natural depth. He slowly pressed the lock button on his phone, the screen turning black, reflecting his own tired, hollow face back at him. He threw the apple into the trash, grabbed his keys, and walked out the door to catch the commuter bus. Back in the sunlit garden, Erica let go of the white rose petal. She turned back to her house, feeling the solid, undisputed ground beneath her feet. The soil was rich, the roots were deep, and the forecast ahead was remarkably, perfectly clear. Let's pour a very stiff espresso and talk about the parasite's projection. For a decade, Marcus convinced himself that Erica was the heavy anchor dragging him down, when in reality, she was the entire ship. He mistook her exhaustion for coldness, never realizing she was exhausted from carrying him. Society loves to tell women that if we just make ourselves a little smaller, a little more fun, and a little less competent, our partners will finally step up. But Erica's story proves the exact opposite. When you constantly overfunction for a man, he doesn't become a better man. He becomes a dependent, and eventually, he will resent you for the very stability he relies on to survive. Erica's ultimate victory wasn't getting the house or watching Marcus lose his job. Her victory was the absolute chilling clarity she found in that emergency room. She recognized that her grief for her marriage and her unborn child was profoundly valid, but she flatly refused to let that grief make her a victim. She buried what was lost, planted a rosebush over it, and got back to work. She took the same ruthless efficiency she had used to build his life and used it to dismantle him. We need to stop romanticizing the act of fixing broken men. Sometimes the most profound act of self-love is simply letting a man face the consequences of his own mediocrity. He wanted to be a free spirit. Fine, let him figure out exactly how much freedom costs in this economy. So here's my question for you tonight. Have you ever been told you were too practical or too serious by someone whose entire life you were quietly holding together? And when you finally dropped the rope, how fast did they fall? Drop your survival stories in the comment, Madam Readout.